hear me, right? Okay, I talk pretty loud. Thank you, Mary and Adrian and members of the Wisconsin Center for Southeast Asian Studies for inviting me. Thank you, Al, for that incredible and kind of embarrassing introduction. I've had Al come to our, Professor McCoy, sorry,
Al's fine.
come to a class that a colleague of mine and I have taught for many years called Foreign Policy as Subversion, and the students just flocked to him at the end and gave him a standing ovation. And I just think, don't we all deserve that all the time? Like, no, Al really knocks it out of the park each time. So it's great to be here and have him introduce me. It's a little bit of a change of pace. I'll also just tell a little story about Professor McCoy. One of the last times he came to Cornell, we had dinner with him and some graduate students. I think you were there, Juan. And you were talking about your book on the Cold War. And I remember, you might not remember this, but I remember kind of poo-pooing it, like, what more is there to say about the Cold War? Come on. And of course, now I'm writing on the Cold War. He's already finished his book, right? And it's thousands of pages long, no doubt. I feel like I'm just starting. I will lean on the excuse that I have done a lot of administrative service. But that's, I'm just a normal human by comparison to others, and this right. So it is a new project. It has changed a lot. I really want to talk about the family and sexuality, but that's proven really hard. And so you're getting a kind of unexpected spin-off of the research I'm doing. And I want to just talk a little bit briefly about the pictures that, at least the couple pictures I'm using. I love this art. It's by a Thai professor, Ajahn Tassanai Tasari up in Chiang Mai, who did a huge exhibition at MIAM up in Chiang Mai a couple years ago called Cold War, the Mysterious. There were 4 panels like this. I mean, has anyone seen that exhibition? Was anybody up there? No. I mean, it's spectacular and it's huge. In fact, one piece is like the length of a football field and is now permanently in there. And he does a lot of this kind of collage technique. And you'll see here, the reason why I like it, and he has given me permission to use it whenever I want, but the reason why I like this picture in particular is very colorful. But if you look in the back, sort of kind of haunting in the very back of this picture, you can see in Thai, it says Communist Ru Seripak, which is communism or freedom. And this is a series of posters that were printed by the US Information Agency, or I'm going to call it USIS, because the branches in Thailand are called USIS. He blew them up, and then he had this sort of collage technique that he put on top of them. But it's all this Cold War propaganda, and he uses a lot of Thai materials, but he also uses US propaganda. And I love this series. There's about 30 in this series of posters. There's not much to say about them because they're really flatly propagandistic. But he's made them spectacularly beautiful and put on top of them various kind of war toys, right? And the other images, there's 3 in this particular series, have even more war-related toys than just Tom and Jerry, which is actually a really violent cartoon, but a lot of Japanese toys in addition to American toys and tanks and so forth. So that's just to explain this picture of him, and also just to really abuse his art for the moment. I am not giving you that big picture overview today. I'm giving you this super pixelated, focused picture. The big picture stuff I feel like I'm still working on, and it's so early in this project so I thank you for indulging me as I explore this, and I'm so happy it's a Southeast Asia crowd because you already think Southeast Asia is interesting, unlike many other places where we give talks and you have to explain where Thailand is and why it might be important. So I'm really, really happy about that. So this project is focusing on many things, but for today at least, I'm going to talk about the cultural and intellectual history of Thailand during the Cold War. Thank you. So much of what we know about the Cold War in Thailand focuses very importantly on the literal weapons in that arsenal. So military police funding and training we know a lot about. CIA support via Thailand in the secret war in Laos and Paru. Massive aid that funded capitalist development of the Thai economy and society. Existing scholarship details the literal deluge of funding and aid, but it has yet to fully examine its impact on cultural and intellectual history. It largely also treats Thailand as a recipient of aid rather than an active partner in dictating, beyond what the US wanted, how that aid would shape society domestically. So I'm swapping out that wide-angle Cold War lens that looks at superpower rivalries and their allies in Southeast Asia, and I'm pixelating in or telescoping in to indigenize the Cold War, to use Madison alum Sinead Hune's phrase, to consider Ratchawong Kukrit Pramoj's work there, right? And he's a Thai public intellectual. I do have pictures of him coming up. He's a Thai public intellectual who I'm arguing really took advantage of US and CIA sponsorship to amplify his version of Thai royalist conservatism that many people argue became hegemonic in the 60s. So he also lets me, he has so many, he's written like 240 books at Cornell's library. I am not an expert on Kukrit. I mean, I've read some of it, but there's a lot more to go. So I'm gonna read this aloud because it's actually a little confusing, but it's an article he wrote in May 1958 in Siam Rat in Thailand called Fear That Corrupts. The American system of government must be ideal for would-be dictators anywhere in the world. For the writers of the American Constitution admitted from the very beginning that the system of government they were introducing was an avoidance of the evil effects of democracy. By democracy, they meant the control of the executive by the legislative body. That's what's evil, and that's what America has avoided. Thus, the idea of an independent executive was evolved, and the US president becomes the most powerful dictator for the duration of his term in office. Substitute the presidential election in America for a Thai coup d'etat, and you already have an American system of government right here. He's kind of prescient. I'm a little worried. It's shocking, but, and that was in 1958. So I just stole this from the web this morning. I'm really focusing on Ratchawong Kukrit Pramoj during the late 50s and the 1960s, but just to say, he has a really long afterlife. He was born in 1911, he died in 1995. He was prime minister briefly. He's known for, this is such a terrible picture of Mao, but he is known for reopening diplomatic ties with the PRC in 75, 76. He loves dogs. And he also really was a cultural specialist in Thai classical dance. And so these are some of the aspects that are celebrated in kind of among the establishment in Thailand. So there's a lot more about him that you're going to learn in this talk, but he's broader than what I'm going to talk about today. I am not going to go into the 70s. He's important, especially given that quote that I just read to you, because his political stance on democracy was pretty clear early on in the Cold War. He was a novelist in addition to all these other things. He's a newspaper editor, so he co-founded Siam Rat in 1950, and he was a major editor for that press for a very long time, had several editorial columns, and there are books and books that have collected these editorials and compiled them. So his anti-communist, anti-democratic royalism has been well studied by others, and I think probably the person best known for this is Saiton, who has written many books on Quan Bin Thai or Thainess, right? And she has a volume or two just on Kukrit's thought alone. I'm not looking at his political philosophy per se. I really want to put him in the context of global relations and especially US-Thai relations rather than just what he does domestically, because I think you have to look at both of these to really get a better picture of what he's doing. And I especially in this talk want to look at his relationship with the Asia Foundation. The Asia Foundation, I'll probably repeat myself if I actually read my talk, was founded as the Committee for a Free Asia in 1951. And there's a longer history here of that I'm not going to get into. I will read about some of their aims and goals. They changed their name in 1954 to the Asia Foundation because many Asians who considered themselves free were a little offended that the title originally was Committee for a Free Asia, as if it wasn't free. Also, some of their propaganda techniques in 1951 changed and became a little bit more subtle by 1954. 1954 is also important because that's the year the Asia Foundation opened up an office in Thailand. And people have written about the Asia Foundation a little bit in Thailand, especially Eugene Ford's book on Cold War monks. So I don't talk about that in the talk, but the Asia Foundation's real project, like the biggest project in Thailand and in Laos, was really a focus on Buddhism, which I don't really talk about here. They also funded many other things in Thailand. So those are the ones I am going to talk about. In the 1950s, I should also say, the Asia Foundation, it sold itself as a private foundation. It is not affiliated with the government. It's a private foundation that argued that as a private foundation, it could actually pursue a more intense anti-communist set of goals than the US government could, right? What we found out in 1966-67 is that the Asia Foundation is a CIA front. So the CIA is super involved everywhere. I'm not interested in buoying them up at all. I am interested in the fact that they were a major part of the US interests in culture and in intellectual programming. Not just the, kind of operational aspects, the, fighting a Cold War actually with soldiers in Laos and so forth. So this is not the operational, this is the intellectual aspects of it, which is more subtle. Okay, so nobody knew that though in 1954, and Kukrit did not know it was a CIA front. In the 1950s, American officials in Bangkok read Kukrit's editorials closely for the views he disseminated about America to his Thai audience. And that's why this article kind of pissed them off because they thought maybe he missed something about American democracy. So he was definitely on their mind. This article is actually in the Asia Foundation collection, so they collected a lot of his articles because they were very deeply interested in him. Thai writers and intellectuals formed an essential weapon in the arsenal of the United States in its global war with the Soviet Union. China came in later, but they really were focused on Soviet Union and the Soviet propaganda. Literature and scholarship, which fell into the category of psychological operations or Psy-war, were harnessed to the US's global strategy to counteract a massive Soviet propaganda campaign to discredit the US as the land of freedom and opportunity in the eyes of the world. So in response to this, the US government as a whole launched powerful initiatives to counteract it. So they created USIS, or the US Information Agency, in 1953. And they established branches all over the world. There were several in Thailand, several just in Bangkok, actually, so, and other places as well. They also created the Congress for Cultural Freedom in 1950. This is another CIA front. Also not known to people until 66, 67. Encounter is a magazine that was associated with Congress for Cultural Freedom. And I mentioned them here, though I'm not going to talk about them so much because Kukrit actually went to at least 2 Congresses for Cultural Freedom in 55 and 58 as the Thai delegate to this space. So he was associated with the CIA in these kinds of ways, somewhat indirect, because he didn't know, since at least 1955. And I will also say that I want to write a chapter on the Thai Social Science Review, which is probably the most critical intellectual journal in Thailand at that time. It was created in '63, also funded by the Asia Foundation. They based Sampam Sat Paritat, their journal, on Encounter, this other CIA funded magazine that was in Europe. Anyway, so there are lots of these kinds of connections that I will hope to pull together when I actually end up writing this. In Thailand specifically, US authorities inundated the country with funds to direct its political position away from neutralism in the early 1950s and towards anti-communism. They supported cultural programs, social organizations, intellectual projects, and lots of individual scholars. If you look in the Asia Foundation archives in Palo Alto, there are lots of Thai names that might be a little surprising. Now, of course, they didn't know they were being funded by the Asia Foundation for their trips to the United States or their education and so forth, but it is really interesting how many people were involved. The Asia Foundation targeted Thai individuals who shaped public opinion, people like Kukrit, by focusing their efforts on public intellectuals. The US could thereby influence large swaths of the population more convincingly based on their theory that Thais were much more likely to believe Kukrit than any American authorities. Because at that time, in the early to mid-1950s, no formal research institute or public opinion survey organization existed in Thailand. American officials relied on a close reading of the Thai press to take the pulse of Thai attitudes towards communism and socialism. Journalists and royal literati, such as those affiliated with the Siam Society and the Department of Fine Arts, held public sway in the 50s and 60s. Not so much university academics. Thai universities started to grow during this period. There were only 2 before that. And those intellectuals really didn't start becoming public intellectuals really until the 60s. So Kukrit's perfect, right? This is all just to back up why they were so focused on him. USIS documents listed Juan? No. Okay, I'm gonna let it go until tonight. Anyway, I gotta find my spot again. All right, USIS documents listed dozens of Thai and Sino-Thai newspapers, who owned them, their audiences, and how they leaned politically. So, and there were a lot of Thai newspapers actually at that time. It's super interesting, but I'm just going to focus on Siam Rat, which was co-founded by Kukrit. It appears on this list as politically extreme right, pro-royalist, and independent. And I'm still not 100% sure what they meant by independent at that time. They list Siam Rat as, quote, the most popular Thai paper with all classes of the reading public, including students, because of its effective use of sarcasm and ridicule of the government. The paper really launched Kukrit's career as a writer and an editor and an opinion maker. Lots of his novels, including Si Pendin, were first serialized in Thai and in English through Siam Rat and its kind of secondary English language publication. By 1955, Siam Rat had a circulation of around 10,000, which made it 3rd ranked in Bangkok for its Thai language dailies. So if you look at the documentation by the Committee for a Free Asia, it was called at the time the Asia Foundation, they were seeking Asian intellectuals who could, and this is a paraphrasing of their own materials, counter communist inroads on native cultures. And I already told you about them, change of name. The methods for doing this, for supporting certain existing scholars and intellectuals and writers, included paying royalties in advance to writers of fiction, autobiographies, and plays that the organization helped publish and distribute commercially to put into broad circulation. The Asia Foundation saw itself as a quote-unquote catalytic agent to assist Asians in bringing about change, rather than being the originator of that change. So what they did was sought out and cultivated Asians who already held compatible concepts of anti-communist political beliefs and freedom. Okay, the freedom part of this goes away. But definitely they shared with Kukrit this idea of anti-communism. And also, in a longer story that I won't tell here, but it is really interesting, Kukrit appeared as #1 on a list of confirmed anti-communist writers in Thailand in 1953 on a sheet of paper typed up by Bill Gedney and given to Bill Donovan, who founded the USIS and was Thai ambassador in 1953 to 54. If you look at the list of Thai ambassadors, U.S. ambassadors to Thailand, in the 50s, they are all either former OSS or really deeply connected to CIA-sponsored coups, like Puravoy, who was in Guatemala before Thailand, and so on. But again, a different story, but Thailand was really important to the U.S. as a kind of bastion of anti-communism, as shown by the kinds of ambassadors they appointed. All right, so I want to use a couple of examples to show how the Asia Foundation supported Kukrit in the hopes of ensuring to keep he kept Thailand anti-communist. He wrote Phai Daeng. Now this book, translated into English as Red Bamboo, was a serialized novel from 1955, and it really cemented the Asia Foundation's interest in Kukrit. It was an anti-communist track. If you know anything about it, you'll know that he plagiarized, depending on your point of view, from an Italian 1950 novel called The Little World of Don Camillo, which was set in Catholic Italy. Kukrit successfully Thaified it, if that's a word, by making the characters and ideas and language and humor really deeply contextualized in kind of a rural Buddhist setting in Thailand. So I'm not going to go over that book, but I will say that both USIS and the Asia Foundation were super excited about this publication, and they worked together to ensure it was widely disseminated within Thailand in Thai, so 8,000 copies sent to temples, right? Remember the focus on Buddhism for the Asia Foundation, but sent to temples, but also sent to primary schools and other schools. They also translated and paid for the translation of this into all the languages of places in Asia where there were sizable Buddhist populations, from Japan to Sri Lanka and India. So they loved this book. It did the work for them, right? Weirdly, USIS selected it for their book translations project, and this is unusual because the USIS book translation project typically took English language books that were super anti-communist and very pro-democracy or pro-US, and translated them into Thai or the other languages in the place that they worked. This is a Thai book that they translated into other Asian languages, right? And so that was paid for by the Asia Foundation. The USIS piece of this was within Thailand, but the Asia Foundation was so excited about it, they kind of had the right of first refusal and did a lot of this work. And I'm going to take a quote from 1955 from this man is Noel Bush, That's his wife Mary, that's Kukrit Pramoj. Noel Bush was the Asia Foundation, the first real Asia Foundation representative in Thailand from 1954 to mid-1955 or so. Anyway, so he was really excited about this book, so this is a quote from him. "We were gratified a few days ago when Kukrit, without prompting on our part, offered to give the Asia Foundation carte blanche in arranging for distribution of red bamboo in any other Asian country where it was wanted, either in English or the Thai versions, or in translations into local languages. He has no interest in financial gain from the book, but in offering the Asia Foundation these rights to red bamboo, however, he, Kukrit, somewhat facetiously proposed that he could consider accepting as recompense an invitation from the Asia Foundation to visit the US under more congenial circumstances. This lighthearted suggestion amounts also to an impromptu vote of confidence for TAF, and we should be prepared to issue such an invitation." So the seed was planted by Kukrit himself for the Asia Foundation to sponsor Kukrit's trip to the United States. He'd never been to the United States before. The phrase vote of confidence, you can kind of see that the Asia Foundation swooned at the idea that Kukrit picked them. And this is because, according to Kukrit, this is another quote, sorry, I've got a lot of these, "American offers of assistance were so persistent and insidious that he had a very difficult time turning down successive offers of travel grants to go to the United States. He said he did not want to go under American government auspices," so he clearly didn't know this link between Asia Foundation and the CIA. So Kukrit had many offers, but he chose the Asia Foundation, and as I mentioned, this is the first CIA cultural friend he was affiliated with. There was a Congress for Cultural Freedom as well. But so the seed had been planted for this trip, the red carpet trip. And here's just some of there was lots of media coverage of this, and I'm going to talk a little bit about it here. I could spend a lot more time on the on this trip to the United States, but briefly, it happened between November 1958 until March 1959, and it was 100% sponsored by the Asia Foundation. I call this section Red Carpet Treatment. The Asia Foundation sponsors Kukrit's cultural expedition to the United States, and it was meant to be cultural. So in the formal invitation to Kukrit, the Asia Foundation explained that the point of the trip was to enhance the relationships between Thailand and the United States in the fields of letters, philosophy, and journalism by making Thai thought in these fields known to Americans. And indeed, his itinerary includes cultural, scholarly, journalistic, political meetings and events, and he met with so many different personalities. He visited Stanford, University of Kansas, I don't know why, but he did, that was a little surprise, Indiana University, Cornell, Columbia, Yale, Princeton. He gave talks at museums and met with choreographers, dancers, and musicians from San Francisco, where he first landed. That's where the Asia Foundation headquarters are and were, to New York City and DC and back. He had co-produced a film called The Diamond Finger, which was about classical Siamese dancing, so he showed that at a lot of these meetings. But he also met with authors and politicians and journalists, and there's a whole list of them: George Kennan, Arthur Schlesinger Jr., Bill Skinner, I gotta include some Thai studies people, Laurie Sharp, Harvard's Kenneth Galbraith, Adlai Stevenson, and many, many others. CBS's Fred Friendly and Ed Moreau, editors of Time, editors of Life, editors of the Ladies' Home Journal. So the Asia Foundation pulled out all the stops, and they just packed his itinerary. They blew their budget. They had to pull back on all new initiatives because it cost so much to give him the red carpet treatment, first class all the way. So what did the Asia Foundation get out of this? Why were they so excited? They wanted Kukrit because of his influence within Thailand. And they really aspired to shape it in directions that would support pro-American anti-communism. Noel Bush provided a cheat sheet about how to handle Kukrit, which went with him when they sent it to the Asia Society in New York City and different schools and universities. And it said, Kukrit likes to hold court, he's best in small groups, he hates stand-up cocktail parties, he didn't drink as far as I know. Also, and this is a quote, he possesses a number of absurd and often flamboyant characteristics, and you can read into that, but but the Thai laugh more often with him than at him. He has always taken delight in being the enfant terrible of the literary and political world of Thailand, and he can be, when he chooses, a very charming man. So that's the sort of cheat sheet that went with him. And the thing is, very few Americans knew or cared about Kukrit Pramoj in 1958. The Asia Society wrote, one of the reasons why it was so expensive to sponsor was because he was a completely unknown factor. And so the Asia Foundation literally had to sell him as an important cultural intellectual who Americans should know. And I won't quote all how they sold him, but they really pushed this idea, right? Because he's not a diplomat, he's not a politician, he's not the king, so there was a lot of work to do. The US officials and the Asia Foundation agreed, it's another quote, that Kukrit must have a high-level treatment. The word lionized seemed to summarize our opinions in this respect. So the answer, without going into the details of the trip, did Kukrit deliver? Did he do what they wanted him to do? And here I have some unanswered questions, but I find it really interesting that among the Thai populations in the United States, there's something weird going on, because the Thai mission in New York City didn't extend any cooperation, and they essentially ignored his visit. And the Thai diplomatic community associated with the embassy in DC, by contrast, totally dominated Kukrit's time. Now, he was set up to meet federal judges, with politicians, with all kinds of policymakers, and academics at USIS, at Johns Hopkins. But because the Thais so dominated his time, he missed a lot of these meetings. And so the Asia Foundation actually suspected that the Thais were purposefully, intentionally thwarting his ability to meet with Thai officials, with American political officials, right? So I don't know the inside story, but there was something going on there for sure. Among Americans, the reports were really mixed. Some people did find him charming and witty and delightful, but others called him indolent, arrogant, flip, shallow, visibly bored, which deeply offended some. So no doubt part of this was Kukrit being himself. He made a lot of enemies in Thailand. There's great enmity between him and Sulak Sivarat, which Sulak has written a lot about. I mean, he wasn't someone that everybody liked. Within Thailand. So I want to give him credit for that. Also, this reflected American arrogance and some racism as well. I mean, you don't use terms like indolent or mercurial, which is coming up, except in reference to Asians for the most part. So there's a lot going on there that you could read into this, but the results were mixed. And so Bush, okay, I don't need the next slide. Bush wrote an 11-page response to these critical accounts of Kukrit's visit. So bear with me, it's a little bit of a long quote, but obviously, in the case of such a mercurial and many-faceted individual, the investment of several $1,000s in high-level hospitality can only be made on the basis of a calculated risk, and whether or not the risk was justified can only be determined over the course of the next 20 or more years, in which it may be anticipated that Kukrit will continue to have a major influence upon Thai thought and behavior. So they're really looking at the long game here. The Asia Foundation hoped that Kukrit would write a book about his experience in America. That was one of the reasons why they pulled out all the stops. And so there's a lot of speculation about this book, and Kukrit kept saying, I need more downtime because I have to take notes for my book. So he definitely kind of led them on that he was going to write a book. But I think this to me is really telling. What Bush wrote is, if Kukrit does write a book about America, it might quite possibly be the first really worthwhile account of America provided by an Asian. Indeed, if his literary presentation proves to be as effective as his powers of penetration and his conversational style, such a book might well deserve a place on the narrow shelf reserved for the truly able contributions on the subject, that is, next to that of Alexis de Tocqueville. So, he is a French political philosopher, aristocrat who wrote Democracy in America, which is one of the most famous tracts in support of the US experiment in the mid-19th century. So now, Kukrit never, to my knowledge, wrote a book about this trip. He did write about America in other ways, but he didn't write a book about this trip. But you can just see how the hopes and aspirations of the Asia Foundation. When Kukrit returned to Thailand, the Asia Foundation continued to closely look at what he wrote about America. They also sent, you could call her a spy, but they sent one of their Thai workers, employees, to listen to a lecture he gave in Thai at Chulalongkorn University immediately after his return. And she reported back that, basically Kukrit said three things. America is stupendously wealthy. Americans rush in everything they do so they get rich fast. And Americans are kind-hearted, but without sentiment. So nothing about democracy. There's not, anyway, so it's unclear how he really felt. Seems a little clear, but it's unclear how the Asia Foundation benefited from this. And a few months after he got back, he wrote, he had this column called Panha Pajamwan, which is like problems of the day, a column in which Thais would write in and ask him a question and he'd respond. And so one Thai reader wrote in and asked, look, the US is Thailand's closest ally. It is also the kind of bastion of democracy. What do you say? When is Thailand going to have a government that's for the people and by the people? And Kukrit responded, being an American ally doesn't mean that Thailand must make everything American. And he basically went on to say that Thailand's not ready for democracy, which sounds a lot like kind of the colonialist playbook. So I know I have a few minutes left, and I think I can fit this in here, but the point here I'm trying to make is that Kukrit was anti-communist before he went to the US, which did not change. He was anti-democratic, as that first quote I showed you suggests, in terms of his beliefs about Thai politics, which also did not change. And in fact, over time, his criticisms of the US bordered on the contemptuous. And some of them are pretty harsh. I'm not going to say undeserved, but he did continue to write anti-communist tracts, Farang Saktina, how Thai feudalism is very different than Western feudalism, and then this is the compilation. But I'm just going to move on because this is a fun picture. So he talked about how Thais speak about Farang, so Caucasians, among themselves. And this is a quote from him. You see, in Thai, the third person singular or plural that can be used for Farang or other nationalities is man, it. It's not he or she, his or hers or they, it's it the whole time. When we talk Thai and we want to refer to you in the third person, we call you it. It's also used to refer to animals. Even Mia Chow, or the Thai women hired out as wives by US soldiers and tourists, refer to their Farang husbands as it. So this is one of the things he's writing a little bit later in the mid-60s. So it's a little potted. I probably could read everything he wrote, and maybe there are some decent things he says about America as well. It is consistently anti-communist, but it's not consistently pro-American. And his coverage of US educational assistance to Thailand, which he called helping ugly American style, and he was with Filipino Romulus when he wrote this and gave a speech. He said it amounted to a form of foreign interference because it was inextricably bound. It inextricably bound educational funding with military and economic funding. That's true. He also critiqued early American Thai studies experts, which are part of this project. saying that they used local Thai scholars as raw material, not as collaborators, and took all the credit for their publications without recognizing Thai interlocutors. So he said some interesting, good, you can see these are probably also true, things, but he didn't really care about what Americans thought of him, or these experts who were all over him like, I don't know, flies on honey. Like they, in the archival sources by those early Thai studies experts, Kukrit was a prize. He was somebody like Anuman Ratchawong and a few other Thai similarly placed anti-communist intellectuals. They really sought to make connections with Kukrit. So, in sum, I'm just going to say that Kukrit Pramoj did not serve the CIA's purposes, they served his, and they served his in a couple of ways. First, just quite literally, they served his in the sense that all the connections that he made under that red carpet sponsored trip helped him create a media blitz for the royal couple when they visited the United States in 1960. He accompanied them as their kind of helpmeet and media advisor or media officer, and he set up photo spreads for Queen Sirikit in the Ladies' Home Journal, sponsored him in San Francisco. And he also connected with journalists who wrote articles in Life and Reader's Digest and other prominent US magazines that he met with while he was there in 58 or 59. He also accompanied them in 1960 on this journey. Second, the trip to the US imbued Kukrit's views of the US with even greater authority and legitimacy within Thailand. So when the CIA covertly sponsored Kukrit in the US, they not only legitimated him and his views, but they also authorized him within Thailand as an expert on the US and its democracy. So I began this talk with the point that Cold War studies of Thailand tend to understand that country as a recipient of aid rather than an active partner in dictating, beyond what the US intended, how that aid shaped Thailand and Thai society. And so I'm hoping this study of Kukrit tells a different story, that US efforts in the realm of Thai culture and intellectual history in support of Kukrit had some powerful long-term impacts within Thailand that went beyond the US government goals. By amplifying, so there's three and then I'm done, by amplifying Kukrit's voice as a native, quote unquote, the US narrowed the range of Thai voices that could surface as representative. The Asia Foundation helped Kukrit's version of Thainess become hegemonic, silencing voices of more radical Thais who desired greater equality, economically, socially, and politically. Those Thais who received US support, at least in the case of Kukrit, only supported US efforts insofar as they were shared by that individual. So we see that Kukrit becomes kind of internationally prominent as a Cold War warrior who thumbed his nose at everyone, including the Americans, but he was an agent in his own right. He was no pawn in this superpower game. And I'll just end with, I really didn't ever want to write about Kukrit. I don't explore him in order to lionize him, unlike the Asia Foundation. But he's really helpful in making the point about the limits of US power during the Cold War. And he also helps me begin exploring the intellectual and cultural sphere of Thai-US relations and Cold War expertise with greater nuance. Sure. But thank you, that's my talk. Somehow, okay, so there is an afterlife for him where he is prime minister briefly in 1975-76, and he is part of the push. He's part of the group who pushes America out, when America was leaving Vietnam, right? He wanted the bases out. So, and he was very popular with those leftist students of the mid-1970s. So this is why, in fact, you said he's a pillar of democracy, but he's actually not a pillar of democracy. Okay, so anyway, thank you guys for listening.